any day now.
How quickly would you be able to cut a trade deal?
Let me answer that question. I wouldn't get into this mess in the first place.
I think that's a very good.
You wouldn't try to improve our trading relationship?
No. I would not get into this mess.
Good to know.
No, stop.
You guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to become transgender?
But your argument, you've made the argument twice that the commander-in-chief's opinion is all that matters.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's your man, Wise. We got to check out Scott Jennings, man. Once again, schooling these daggone liberals. Doing what he does best, man. You know, what we do know is Abby Phillips, man, she cooking. Her show, Newsnight with Abby Phillips, it's one of the top performing shows, killing it, crushing it in key demographics, man. And I'm for certain that Scott Jennings is playing a major role in that success right there. Like I said, I got a couple clips. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get into it.
Scott Bessent today under oath said we're currently negotiating with 16 of the 17 most important countries, and he'll be meeting with the Chinese this weekend when they all converge in Switzerland. I think dealing with, with all due respect to all these other countries making deals, they're small and relatively unimportant. We're the big player in the field, and everybody knows it, and people would rather do business with us than do business with China because of what Jim just said. They have all these strategies to inflict pain upon you if you don't bend to their will or allow them to break the rules. And so I think when you're dealing with the United States, it's going to take a little bit of time to work out the best deal for us and the best deal for them. But I have a lot of confidence that when push comes to shove and people get right down to it, an alliance, a trading partnership, business dealings with the United States is a heck of a lot better than being reliant on the Chinese because they have seen what they have done to us and everybody else in the world. The decoupling and the isolation of China is a real thing, and, it may be a little painful, but it's necessary. Most significant country.
No,
we are the
Scott,
world's
stop with the
superpower.
jingoism.
We are the world's superpower.
Stop with the jingoism.
Dealing with us is the most important thing.
Stop. Do you think that China can do just as well with the EU? Do you think that China can do just as well with India?
If I were the EU, I would not want to be reliant. And look what's happened to us. They don't want it.
It's not a question of reliance. It's a question on the fact that everybody is cutting deals with each other. We're not cutting deals with anybody.
We have one thing in the news tonight.
No.
You guys keep saying
they're having discussions with each other.
We're in the middle of talking to 16 countries, according to the Treasury Secretary.
According to the Treasury Secretary, we've been hearing from them for over a month that we're on the cusp any day now.
Any day.
No, I'm saying that I've been
hearing.
He's
under oath today.
I'm saying that every deal that we heard about is coming any day now.
How quickly would you be able to cut a trade deal?
Let me answer that question. I wouldn't get into this mess in the first place.
I think that's a very good.
You wouldn't try to improve our trading relationship?
I would not get into this.
Good to know.
No, Scott, let me tell you something. Kentucky, my friend, you guys import more than any other state in the nation. You want to represent that state in the Senate? You go tell the people of Kentucky why they have to sit there and listen to this nonsense. Their bourbon's about to be tariffed to hell. You guys are about to have no trade with Canada. You're about to lose millions upon tens of millions of dollars just in Ontario province alone with all the stuff that you're not importing there. So why don't you go tell the people of Kentucky?
We have a lot more ahead on the Canada piece
politics
of
than
this.
you do. I can tell you, they trust the president.
Oh, okay.
They voted for the president, and they're going to let him make the best deals for them.
That's why we don't need people like this lady in office. We don't need, honestly, we don't need these people that are willing to sell out our nation, to continue to make sure that we get bad deals in any positions of power in this country. Yeah, when you're trying to fundamentally change how we do business, of course, it's going to hurt a little bit. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of pushback. But negotiations aren't overnight situations. And yeah, when Scott asked, well, how quickly would you get an international trade deal done? I mean, come on, man. This isn't a just a fly-by-night situation. This is serious, and it affects both sides. So we want to make sure that we get a good deal, but I'm sure the other nations, they want to make sure that they get a good deal that makes sense for them as well. So I don't expect that these negotiations will happen overnight, but I'm sick and tired of people like this who are just willing to bend over backwards because they're afraid of a little pain. We don't need that. We don't need it. If that's the type of leadership that they would like for us to have, I reject it wholeheartedly, man. Wholeheartedly. These people, for the life of me, I just don't understand why they are anti-America.
The main argument, Elena, that the Trump administration is making here is that that allowing transgender troops to serve hurts lethality and it hurts readiness. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence of that. I think that, if that was the case, we've seen transgender people serving honorably for the last several years. And what has changed between now and then? They've just woken up to a new administration who has a different outlook on their ability to serve. So I think that, if you talk to people who are serving on active duty alongside transgender troops, they're not making these complaints. The leaders in the military are not making these complaints. These are political complaints about military service. So I think that all of the courts that have looked at this issue and looked at it, and said there's nothing in fact to back up what the government is claiming here. In fact, the judges challenged them to produce evidence, and they couldn't produce any evidence. So I think it's a really dark day for our country, where basically we're allowed to discriminate against a class of people.
Scott, if they can't produce evidence that this actually does, in fact, have an impact on readiness, I mean, how is this not then just discrimination?
Well, it's the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who, according to our Constitution, is the head of the military. I mean, regardless of anyone's opinion or anybody's, whatever side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, at some juncture, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he has and should have broad latitude to determine how the armed forces should be operated. And so I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's ultimately what the court said today, was that the president is the commander-in-chief, and we gotta respect that.
Well,
under our Constitution.
but I mean, to her point, if there's not a downside, and it's been going on for years now, and I mean, I'm just presenting your argument to them.
Yeah.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I mean, I think that the president, we'll ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this. But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens in the court.
I can. I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? Well, no, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that, but it's still
excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
I'm gonna leave this one alone
hold on.
today.
I'm curious. Why is it ridiculous? I mean, you just said.
So we are going to compare people who are suffering from gender dysmorphia to Black people and to Latin people, Hispanics. Is that what we're doing? These liberals, man, they're something else, man. They are something else. And last time I checked, President Trump is the commander-in-chief. He is the end-all be-all when it comes to our United States military. The buck does stop with him. And a lot of the people within the military, they're not going to speak out. They're not really allowed to get on social media and talk about how much of a distraction these people can be. They're not going to talk about the fact that these people, taxpayer dollars through the military, are paying for quote unquote gender affirming care. There was a time when I was in the military, way back when, you had don't ask, don't tell. And I thought it was a great policy. You do you. I'm going to do me. We're not going to talk about it. When we get to work, it's going to be about the work. When we're on deployment, it's going to be about the mission. Simple as that. I think by adding these individuals in, they tend to be more of a distraction for the men and for the women. And there's a whole list of other situations that we're not going to get into, but let's keep this thing going.
The president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, he wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be Black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
I mean, are you really going to go down this ridiculous road?
I'm sorry.
This is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous argument.
Well,
okay.
The president, what they've already said about
and Secretary of
Defense.
the President and Secretary of Defense have an argument here. They believe that readiness and unit cohesion and overall operations of the military are impacted by this. That is their opinion, and that is the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who the Constitution gives broad latitude to run the armed forces. So That's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become commander in chief yourself. But until you do, he's the commander in chief.
I have to just say,
That's-
I didn't
you know.
hear an answer to the hypothetical, right?
That's a-
I just
that's
didn't hear it.
hypothetical, though.
I
That's
didn't.
so
I mean,
ludicrous.
okay. The definition of discrimination, according to the American Psychological Association, discrimination is the unfair or prejudicial treatment of people or groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation. What is the difference between, prohibiting certain groups like transgender people from serving versus, people based on their race or even their gender, frankly?
I personally think there's a difference, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will say.
Do you believe that race and are you saying that the quality of race and the quality of transgender are the same?
I'm just asking the question because I think you're making there's a distinction, but you're not explaining why.
No, I'm asking you guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to become transgender?
But your argument, you've made the argument twice that the commander-in-chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well,
So
under
if
the
they wake up-
Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion, there's nothing to back that up. They meet the physical standards, they meet the intellectual standards, they have voluntarily decided to serve their country, to give their life for this country. So many of us don't have to. That it's the opinion without any basis in fact that's what matters more than the Constitution of equal rights and equal protection.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other thing, or there's a few things that bother me about this, and mostly it was the language of the policy, right? When you're reading at some of these words, transgender people as inherently untruthful, undisciplined, dishonorable. That's like a very weighty thing to say about people who are courageously deciding to protect this country. The other problem, Scott, is that it's never enough. It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today. And
80% of Americans agree, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. And 80%, guess what? The majority sometimes is wrong. That also happens, right? Because the majority used to believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who was a threat, that somebody who was not a good American. The majority of people used to be against civil rights. Were they right? No, they weren't. And so the whole point is when you target one group, and inevitably that line moves to everybody else. And I'm not saying he's coming for black people tomorrow, but considering that this is a military or this is a leadership that is already using DEI as code word for black people already when it comes to the military, suddenly when you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the marginalized
What do you mean by vulnerable?
community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the lethal fighting force?
He should recruit people who want to serve and protect this country. And it's really kind of ironic considering he dodged the draft that he suddenly has an opinion about.
He has an opinion because he won the
The good
election.
news is, and Elena, you pointed this out, this is going through the court system. The other side has the opportunity to present evidence.
Except for tomorrow, there's going to be thousands of people who wake up and get processed out. The harm will be done.
And I certainly understand that. But again, there's still an opportunity for it to continue through the proper process.
Right, but they wake up tomorrow without a job, being removed from their commands. Operational readiness will be impacted. And so there's commands that are going to be left without leaders. There's going to be real life implications for theaters around the world where our military is protecting this country. And for what end?
Elaine, I guess my point is, if a strong enough evidence is presented throughout the court process, all the way up to SCOTUS, and it's ultimately believed, okay, hey, the other side has enough evidence where we can't rule in favor of the executive, then the executive, I believe, would respect that decision. But we have to allow this thing to move forward and see what was
your experience in the military like? Did you serve after you had transitioned, or?
No, I served before my transition.
So you weren't in during your at all?
No. I came to know that I was transgender while I was serving with a top secret and above clearance. And I knew that I couldn't pass my polygraph test. And so I had to make a tough decision. Do I stay true to my character, my values, my integrity, or do I choose to leave this role and live a private life? And so I think that the challenge is that the injunction was to allow people to continue to serve while the courts played out, right? So there would be no harm done to these folks, giving the courts an opportunity to work through these issues so people wouldn't lose their jobs. Now they're going to wake up tomorrow without jobs They can't just come back in for serving 22 years, waiting for this court case to work its way through for 6, 9 months, 2 years.
So you hadn't, so was there a prohibition on you transitioning while you were in the military?
Back in that time, there was a ban against serving if you were, the don't ask, don't
This
tell
was under-
policy.
yeah, this was in the mid 90s.
This was in the mid 90s. Yeah.
So, but let me, can I ask you a question? Because I think this is relevant. You know, Elena was serving, left because of this policy. How many people is it okay to lose who are competent, who are doing their jobs because for reasons like that? I mean, at the time, she could have been a gay or lesbian, and it probably would have been the same result as well. I mean, I think that's why ultimately they ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
I mean, I think
discrimination.
I think ultimately the commander in chief and the secretary of defense have to decide comprehensively about troop levels, troop readiness, and unit cohesion.
But
and
that has
overall
never-
overall recruitment. They're actually quite happy with recruitment right now.
But that has never, there's never been a military.
Yeah, recruitment is actually up. Recruitment's actually up over these, first 4 months or whatever the case may be since Trump has taken office, or even going back to November since it announced that he won. It's kind of sad to me that you have Abby Phillips and Jamel Hill, two Black women who, are all Black until this particular situation comes about. And then they're like, oh, yeah, it's the same. It's on the same playing field, which I just completely disagree. And Scott Jennings was asking the question, if you notice, we didn't get an answer to said question. Are you comparing one's orientation to, to the God-given organ that was given to us? Like, come on, really? That's what we're doing now? That's what we're doing. And shout out to Scott Jennings. I mean, it's a sensitive subject. I get it. It is a sensitive subject, and you don't want to be offensive. And I understand it. Same thing with Shermichael. They didn't want to be offensive, but they just said, we disagree that these two they're not on the same level. They're just not. And the fact that Abby, throws this out there, and then Jamel Hill, who is supposed to be a sports reporter, says that, basically she's coming out in defense of these individuals competing with women. Because we don't hear it the other way around. You don't hear men, the women that have, whatever you call it, converted, whatever you want to call it, transitioned over into men. You don't hear about them going into male spaces and dominating. Just don't hear it. But I want to hear from you guys and what you guys think about this in the comment section, man. Scott Jennings, I really, really appreciate him always being willing to stand on his square. He doesn't allow himself to be pushed around. And Shermichael is a very, very close second on this show as a contributor, man. Man, spot on analysis, guys. Man. Like, share, subscribe, turn the notifications on so you never miss an upload. Keep God first. Stay prayed up. We'll catch up with you all next time. Peace.
Vibes so raw.